Welcome, everyone. Simon Rosenberg, Hopium Chronicles. We're back with another great event. Today, we have Justice Allison Riggs, who is unfortunately still in a contested race in North Carolina, the last remaining uncalled race in the country. I'm sure she was imagining at this point in her life she'd be doing something very different than talking to us today, but we're really pleased that she's here with us today. Welcome, Justice Riggs.
Thank you, Simon. I am thrilled to be here and would always be happy to talk to you. Wish it was under better circumstances, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, listen, you are in the front lines of one of the emerging battles, most important battles for our democracy and our freedoms and our liberties. And can you just walk us through how we got here? I mean, just go
Yeah.
back to the beginning, tell us the story, and then bring us up to present day, perhaps.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the opportunity because I know so many of your followers really care about what we're trying to do here in North Carolina. So when I joined the bench at the beginning of 2023, we were undertaking with the Democratic Party and for people who love justice here in North Carolina, a project to win back our courts for justice. Our North Carolina state courts had shifted pretty radically in the previous couple of years. And state courts are critically important for reproductive freedom after the overturning of Roe v. Wade. State courts are the front line of the battle against gerrymandering and for every vote to count equally. So we were doing something big. We were running on our values. We were articulating a three-cycle plan to win back our courts in 2028 before the next round of regular redistricting. And we knew that folks were scared of what we were doing, and we also knew that I knew that there was very likely to be post-election litigation. So I had worked to secure a legal team even before Election Day because I'd seen the Republican National Committee filing lawsuits all over the country in battleground states, priming the ground to challenge ballots if their preferred candidates lost. My race was the closest race in North Carolina. North Carolina was, in some ways, a very, very successful state in a red
Yeah.
wave election. We won about half of our statewide seats. We elected a Democratic governor, attorney general, and we held my seat on the North Carolina Supreme Court by 734 votes out of 5.5 million votes cast. I would, I mean, for your listeners, I don't, I want to emphasize that we expect elections in North Carolina to be close. I knew this is what I signed up for in 2020. Sherry Beasley, who was the first Black woman to ever serve as Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, lost her race by 401 votes. So this is not new to us. We had, after my election, two recounts that confirmed my win. And throughout that process, I and the Democratic Party said recounts are good. Recounts are healthy. They help people build confidence in the system. The statewide recount, the first recount, confirmed the exact margin of my victory, 734 votes. A sample hand-eye count it wasn't done statewide, but it confirmed the accuracy of the election results. And rather than accept defeat graciously, my opponent instead went to court and sought to have thrown out or canceled more than 68,000 votes cast by eligible North Carolina voters these voters followed every single rule put in place for them and advertised to them as the rules of the election. And Simon, those 68,000 voters included my own parents. It is hard to describe the scope of this challenge because kindergarteners understand intuitively that you cannot change the rules of a game after you've played the game and you've lost. Like it's just a very basic principle of fairness. I promise you, my parents are eligible voters. A disproportionate number of the voters being challenged are young, people of color, women, and disproportionately military. So my opponent is trying to toss the ballots of the people who raise their hands to say, I'm willing to put my life on the line to protect your freedoms. And he and his supporters want to toss their ballots. So that's sort of how we got to where we are today, which is this protracted legal battle that we've now passed the 5-month mark since Election Day, and there isn't an immediate end in sight.
So what happened just in the last few days was that you had an appeals court rule in favor of their case, and then the Supreme Court of North Carolina put a stay on that. And so, help us understand what just happened in the last couple of days. And when you say there's no end in sight, what is the possible future here?
So, for the last 5 months, there'd been an argument about whether this case should be resolved in state court or federal court. There are federal laws that govern some of the voting mechanisms that are at issue here. So, the Help America Vote Act, the Uniformed and Overseas Citizens Voting Act. It's been my position that, and the federal Constitution protects these rights. It's been my position that federal court should be where these issues are resolved because the relief my opponent is seeking would violate federal law. And so the federal courts agreed with me that the federal courts had jurisdiction to hear this issue. They decided to let the state court answer questions of state law first before saying they retained jurisdiction and would revisit the matter if the state courts were to order anything that would violate federal law. So we have been plodding our way through the state court system. Just last week, we got a ruling from the North Carolina Court of Appeals, which is our intermediate court. It was a 2-1 ruling that gave, for the first time in history, gave credence to this idea that you can toss 68,000 ballots of voters who followed the rule and did nothing wrong 5 months after an election. Over the weekend, the ruling didn't go immediately into effect. Over the weekend, we sought and got a stay from the North Carolina Supreme Court, pending the Supreme Court deciding when and on what time frame to hear the case. So we believed we were entitled to a stay pending appeal, that this issue was going to get argued further, and that trying to implement this order, which also, so it gave credence to my opponent's claims, and it also said, well, some of these voters can fix their ballot. It's really their registration, not their ballot, but fix it within 15 days. Again, there's no precedent for
Right.
this, but so we knew that the order wasn't in effect right away. We knew this was going to have to go through the Supreme Court. We sought an emergency appeal over the weekend. The Supreme Court on yesterday issued the temporary stay, and now we'll be wrangling in front of the court on which I sit. I'm recused for a multitude of obvious reasons. It would be wrong to decide my own case. I think it's important that people understand what's going on, and I'm a party to the case, so I'm not just affected. I've intervened in the case to stand up for the voters who are in the crosswinds of this dispute that they didn't ask for, they didn't
Yeah.
want. And so I have said all along through the state court process that I fully intend to go back to federal court if the state court would order any voter disenfranchised or burdened. And so when I say, I don't know when this is going to end. I don't know on what time frame the North Carolina Supreme Court will take this up. I don't know what their ruling will be, obviously. We will go to federal court to seek relief if we need to be. So I have been telling folks who are worried, and again, including my parents. My poor father is so stressed out about this that he served his country in uniform for 30 years. my parents have both been voting for 50 years and never had a problem, and now they're both being targeted for disenfranchisement. But I'm a former civil rights attorney. Before I joined the bench, I fought for voting rights, including arguing twice in the United States Supreme Court. So I'm not new to tough fights. I knew before Election Day that this was going to be a very, it's a very wrought, tense time in our country. I knew these
Yeah.
elections were going to be tight, and that folks, national players in particular, are testing new strategies and approaches so that if an election turns out a way that they don't like, they can toss the results of the vote. And we see this as a continuation of what started in 2020 and continued in 2022. And they're testing it here in a state judicial race. I certainly think because they assume maybe this is below the radar, but it would set dangerous precedent, and I liken it to dropping a match in a very dry forest. It is all too easy for this kind of nefariousness to take flame, and it will spread like wildfire unless we fight to stop it. So I tell folks that we care about our courts and we care about our judges, particularly in hard times, because judicial independence is core to the survival of our democracy. If we look at the history of democracies that have died across the world, when the institutions that are designed to be checks and balances and fail safes start falling prey to political pressure, threats of impeachment start affecting judicial judgments. When judges become scared and fearful, that's how democracies die. And so, North Carolina voters elected me to fulfill this sacred oath to serve as a constitutional officer because they trusted that I would not bow to pressure, that I would stand up for their rights. And Simon, I am clear that I am defending the rights of people who didn't even vote for me. Those people made a choice that they were constitutionally entitled to make, and you should be able to trust your judges and justices to defend the rule of law and your constitutional rights, regardless of political ideology.
The other backdrop to this, in addition to the national fear of them continuing to experiment and to find new ways to cheat and to undermine the integrity of democracy here in America, is the other backdrop for our listeners and viewers is that North Carolina is a swing state. It's leaned a little bit red sometimes, it's leaned a little bit blue sometimes, but it's gone back and forth for decades now. But yet the legislature there, because of this extraordinary redistricting that took place, has had the ability to override, the sort of supermajorities last cycle that we were able to break. And I think that one of the reasons we got so heavily involved in North Carolina last cycle was that I felt that there were really two states that had yet to sort of fix politically the incredible redistricting, that losses that Democrats had, back in the prior redistricting, all the way back in the Obama era. And it was Wisconsin and North Carolina, where Pennsylvania and Michigan had clawed their way back to a place where, these huge redistricting gains and the extremism of those parties had been sort of curtailed. But one of the reasons we raised so much money and got so involved in North Carolina was that you not only had this sort of incredible hijacking of our democracy, because it's very hard to have a state that is purple as can be and have one party have two-thirds of the legislature and have could override the governor's veto, could change the rules about what power the governor had to strip power from the governor or the attorney general. I mean, the backdrop to this is the Republican Party in North Carolina is among the most extreme, ambitious, wild, illiberal political parties in the entire country in a deeply purple place. And so one of the reasons our community has been so engaged is that we understood the nature of this fight going back 2 years ago when we started first getting involved in North Carolina, And here we are seeing after the election, right? There was a bill passed that stripped Jeff Jackson, right, of some of his authorities. We've got this going on. And so for the people watching and listening here, what we're up against here, this is not an isolated case. We are up against some of the most extreme politicians in America in North Carolina, the poor people of North Carolina, the good people of North Carolina, a remarkable state where I've been lucky enough to spend time with my wife over the years, and we've got very close friends there. She went to college there. And it's been hijacked by incredible extremists with enormous ambition behind them who have really turned North Carolina from a sort of an even-keeled state to a far-right experimental state. And it's why this fight matters so much. It's because this is not just about what's going to happen across the country, the fire, the matches, but it's also because North Carolina deserves better in such a profound, fundamental way, and how badly governed they've been, how unlucky the people of North Carolina are to have had their state hijacked by extremists. And it's why this work that our community has done in what you pointed out was, look, North Carolina may have been the biggest success story of all the battleground states in 2024 for Democrats under, down ballot. And, the governor's race, we won half the statewide races. We won your race. And so it shows that this is a purple state. It's not a right-wing extremist state. And so for people who are watching, listening, there is so much at stake here, right? On such a basic level about us overcoming, curtailing the liberalism that has overtaken the Republican Party, battling the extremists, getting back to sort of common sense politics, rule of law, all those quaint little things that we used to take for granted in this country. And so this is a really important fight on many levels, right? And it's why, you've listened to Justice Riggs, right? I mean, she's just a good, strong attorney, right, who wants to do her job and being prevented from doing it. And so I hope that people listening and watching today realize that, this fight is ongoing. It's very expensive. And so perhaps, Justice Riggs, you can talk a little bit about, what's happening on the ground, because everyone was going to run around and go re-register those 68,000 people, but that's on hold now, right? What can people do to help you now in
Yeah.
this fight?
Yeah, there is work to be done, and we want folks to understand that in addition to raising money for paying for the legal battle and organizing the work organizing to, if we need to, chase and cure it's not even ballots, registrations, we need help. So folks can go to my website, rigsforourcourts.com, where they can make contributions to my legal defense fund. We think this battle all in, assuming it takes a year, could cost $3 million. We are preparing to do this chase and cure effort if we need to. One of the challenges of election law, and particularly when you're in this unprecedented space, is if the rules are changing rapidly, you want to be careful with your steps that it doesn't somehow make the situation worse. And we want to make sure that every voter registration is easily connected back to the voter who cast the ballot last year. So that's why we've cautioned we're going to have time to do this. We have built the capacity in state here in North Carolina to do this on shorter time frames, but the dust is still settling on what the guidance will be and what the rules will be if we need to do it. And right now, that order is not in effect. We don't need to do anything, but yet we're organizing, building the infrastructure. If folks sign up on my website, you'll get information about next steps. We not only think there will be roles for every North Carolinian who wants to help make sure that every eligible vote counts. We think there will be work that out-of-state supporters can do as well. And, we know that these are tough times, and this is the North Carolina fighting spirit. We know what it means to stand up for what is right and against what is wrong. And for folks who feel like the world is spinning out of control, this is a fight that we can and we will win. So, encourage all of your listeners to keep paying attention to states like mine and Wisconsin, places where the fight for fair courts is winning. We are
Right.
gaining ground. It is the blueprint for what a better America looks like, and that I'm just really excited to have your support and attention on this fight.
Well, and listen, we were founded 2 years ago in March of 2023, and the very first thing our community did was help Ben Wickler and win that Supreme Court seat, which then allowed the fair maps to be put into place. And so that was a founding project for this community and very core. We were deeply involved in the Supreme Court race last week. We were one of the largest fundraisers in the whole country for that race, and I know that thousands and thousands of Hopiam people were involved in helping Susan Crawford win. And Ben and Susan came and spoke to us. We've had them, come and see us. And so these kinds of fights of unraveling and helping liberate to some degree states that have been captured by these far right extremists. This is really important work, and I'm just very grateful. And it's core for the newer Hopiam people. I just want you to know we raised more than $1 million for the North Carolina Democratic Party last cycle. We were the largest fundraiser, our community, for the North Carolina Democrats in the whole country. We had more than 10,000 people in the Hopiam community donate to Anderson Clayton and to you and to, and to the whole team in North Carolina. I'm very grateful for all of that. I mean, Josh Stein, I don't know if this got in the briefing, but Josh's sister Gerda and I were very close friends in college, and I've known the Stein family going all the way back to my days at Tufts a few years ago, just a couple years ago now. And I'm very proud of Josh and your new governor. But for this community, I want to say that the biggest investment of time and energy that we've put in anywhere in the country has been in North Carolina. This is important to us. And we were very much part of the huge important wins that we had, but we got one more that we need to stay with here. We haven't finished the job. And that's why we've been raising money through our own site into the North Carolina Party, to help support Anderson and the work she's doing, but also to get ready to go win a Senate seat that we have to go win this year in North Carolina in 2026 in North Carolina. And so, we're going to stay with you, Justice Riggs, and hopefully the next time you come back, it will be as yourself as a Supreme Court justice and not fighting these rearguard rancid battles that you're having to fight. And just grateful for your grit and fortitude and good cheer and willingness to put it all on the line for our democracy. So we're really grateful for all of that. And I wish you well. And we will continue to keep our community informed about your progress. And if there's an opportunity for people to support through volunteer, we will be the first to come running to send our troops in to help you out.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you all for fighting with us.
Good luck, my friend. And, we'll have you back soon. Take care.
Yes, love it. Thank you, Simon. Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Thank you.